millions of vulnerable Americans struggle to get reliable transportation to their medical appointments. That's why I started MedHall. Citi launched the Impact Fund to invest in both women and entrepreneurs of color like me so I can realize my vision and give everything I've got to my company and my community. I got you.
For the love of people, for the love of community, for the love of progress. Citi.
Welcome to the PaleyFest New York. I'm Vlada Gelman, West Coast editor of TV Line, and I'm delighted to be your host for this special conversation honoring New Amsterdam. Thanks to PaleyFest's official card and official sponsor, Citi, for helping to make the event possible. Today, we are thrilled to welcome the members of the series' gifted cast and creative team, along with honored guests from the World Health Organization. Joining us are David Schulner, creator, executive producer, and showrunner; Peter Horton, executive producer; Ryan Eggold, who plays Dr. Max Goodwin; Janet Montgomery plays Dr. Lauren Bloom; Freema Agyeman plays Dr. Helen Sharp; Jocko Sims, who plays Dr. Floyd Reynolds; Christopher Bailey, Arts and Health Lead for the World Health Organization; and Dr. Bailey and Van Kerkhove, American infectious disease epidemiologist. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to everyone watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Paley Center's YouTube channel link below, and let's start our program. So I wanted to kick things off with the start of season 3 and that beautiful, powerful montage. Peter and David, can you talk about crafting that montage, showcasing the progress of the COVID pandemic at the hospital?
I remember when I thought about it, it was May. I think it was my birthday. So really 2 months into the pandemic. And I just remember being trapped at home like everyone else. And in LA, there was also wildfires happening. And like, it really felt like it was like the end of the world and you could not leave your house. And I just remember like all the things I took for granted in walks in my neighborhood, seeing friends, and I started thinking about the song, What a Wonderful World. But thinking about it from the perspective of someone who knew there were beautiful things outside, but couldn't get to them or couldn't see them. But we knew that world was still there. And I was hoping it would still be there when I was allowed to leave my house. So I had the idea of the song first, and then I started acquiring images. But it was really Peter who found those moments with the cast. And so I want to turn it over to Peter because I came up with like 5 or 6. And I remember Peter saying, I don't think this is enough.
Never enough. I didn't know that was the genesis of that, David. I wish you'd have told me that. That would have totally changed the montage. The thing on our end, for all of us, about that montage was we employ real nurses and doctors whenever we can on our show as extras or supporting cast members. And so when we got to the point of having to recreate what they had just gone through, they were all there and had it all in their systems. And so we would just gather those moments. A lot of them were found in just real images that are out in the media at the time. And we'd all been so accustomed to by then. And then had them recreate them right after they had really happened. It was an experience I'd never had before as a director. Seeing these real nurses do a specific hug with 3 of them that we found an image of, but to see them do it and recreate it out of their own experience just was so moving to go through. And I even remember it was so unique, that whole episode. I remember Janet, you and I had a moment of when Janet was doing this beautiful scene that comes later where she's talking about how she misses the pandemic. Because it made her feel so alive when it was really, overwhelming. And I remember a moment where she was sort of trying to get to the emotion of it. And I walked up to her and I said, this is happening. This actually is happening right now. And it just filled her. She just got filled with emotion and shot that beautiful, beautiful scene. So I think for all of us, doing something that was so acute and so real and so profound in all of our lives, but especially in the lives of the people who actually were in the hospital experiencing this, was just really unique and informed, I think, that whole montage.
For the cast, how difficult was it to get through those scenes, and how much preparation were you able to do in terms of speaking to people who were on the front lines?
I think we're really lucky because we actually have real doctors and nurses that work on our show, and pretty much every single day that I work, Lisa Wing, who works at Bellevue Hospital, is on set with me. And I was texting her throughout the pandemic. And I think what a lot of people found difficult is if you weren't a first responder, you were kind of sat there, not being able to go to work, you're doing your part was sort of wearing your mask and not being out and not socializing. So I think it's finally, when we were stepped on set, it felt like what we could give back to them was a truthful portrayal of what they'd been through.
Did anybody else from the cast have any memorable experiences filming that montage?
I just remember it being sort of cathartic in a way. It was kind of a release to sort of, for a moment, try to embody that enormous struggle. And sort of, there was a moment where Peter had this extreme close-up that I walked into all the way through Janet's ER, and arrived and just took the mask off, and we had makeup, do the lines and things that, of course, real people were actually experiencing, but we were sort of creating the look of that constant wear and tear. And I remember thinking, how the hell do you embody all of this in a moment? And just having the utmost respect for the frontline workers who were really battling this every day. And yeah, I just remember in that moment thinking, just being overwhelmed with what a battle, what a daily, monthly, yearly now battle with this thing, and the massiveness of it,
Christopher and Maria, I was curious, as people who were on the front lines of this early pandemic, how did you feel watching that montage, and what struck you about the show's depiction of the pandemic?
Well, I think when I saw the montage, my first, I was actually really interested in Peter's description of it, because I was so affected by the authenticity of it, the emotional authenticity of it, that feeling of exhaustion and working beyond exhaustion, and doing what you had to do because this was your calling. And I was so moved by it that I actually posted the YouTube version of it onto our intranet. So it was seen by all of our country offices around the world. And the response was just amazing. People began commenting on the cathartic feeling it gave them, that just this notion that somebody listened, somebody understood, and was giving voice to what they were feeling that they were going through in isolation. It was pretty remarkable.
I thought it was just beautiful. I mean, watching it totally brought me to tears. And, I think through this whole thing, everyone in our own way, whichever role you have, you try to keep it together, like as much as you can. And you try not to let yourself go. I do that myself because I'm always afraid if I do, I'll just never get that composure again. But what I loved about the montage, the music was beautiful and it was perfect. But the scenes and the hugging and the tenderness, but the ending of it with the hope of the vaccine, I loved the shot of Janet, your character, getting the vaccine and then you guys smiling at each other. And it was just that amazing feat of having a vaccine, but showing the exhaustion and the bruising, we have what I liked about it was ending with that hope and sort of moving past that. What we're dealing with at the World Health Organization around the world is that so many health workers don't yet have that. So they haven't reached that arc. They haven't reached that point where they have that safety, they have that vaccine. But I liked that you portrayed it with such authenticity. I love that word. It's true. I mean, you have that throughout the whole show, but there was beauty in it, and it really, really moved me. And I liked how you did that scene and then you kind of moved with it with the rest of the show. So to me, it was very touching, and I loved it.
What's interesting about the vaccine is that we had to write that scene before there was a vaccine available. So I wrote the scene with fingers crossed that we would actually get there. And we knew we'd have to cut that little piece out if it never happened. So we shot it before we even knew that it was real. We were just hoping we would get there.
That's amazing.
I think there's another thing too that David and I were hoping to achieve with this, which is this whole pandemic has become so politicized in our culture. But somehow when you are taken inside of the people who are really having to deal with it, up close and personal, the frontline workers of it, if you can really experience that, the politics just have to go out the window. It's what happens when you hear these anecdotal stories of people who, for political reasons, not gotten vaccinated, and suddenly they're dying. The death wish is, I wish I'd gotten vaccinated. I mean, everyone, the playing field is equal and even when it comes to that intimacy with what's going on. And I think we were hoping to just depict a taste of that, to get it out of people's politics and into their hearts.
I mean, you did have to play fortune teller a little bit, in terms of looking ahead at where the pandemic was going to go. But before season 3 started, what was the preparation process like in terms of how closely you worked with medical experts, not just to get the medicine correct, but also to get the emotional consequences correct, the societal consequences?
Well, we work with them every day on everything. They're the ones who keep us honest. And so we really, turned right to them on this moment and asked them, first of all, to participate, because for them to reenact something that was that viscerally devastating, and to then come in and pretend to do it again was asking a lot just to begin with. But they embraced it. They just jumped into it. I think on some level, maybe it was cathartic for them too, just to be able to reenact it and share it. So it's not something they had to go through in isolation or without the chance for the world to see it. But every step of the way, as they do throughout our show, but especially for that episode and that montage, they were right next to us.
One of the things that the show does so well is it shows that healthcare is more than just doctor-patient interaction. All sorts of things like community resources, like not having internet access to get the correct information, marginalization of certain communities, all affect one's healthcare. So first, I wanted to ask Jocko and Freema, how did it feel to see the show tackling the role of systemic racism in healthcare?
That's always been an attractive thing for me with this series. One episode we had, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was season 1 or season 2, where Max goes into the barbershop and he's trying to help Black men with their health. And he tries to enlist help from me at some point during the episode. But because of that, I got to go to Morehouse and speak with the medical community there, Morehouse College of Medicine, and the Black audience, and really just engage them in an entertaining way by showing them this episode and talking about these factors in our community. The fact that there's a disparity in the healthcare and access to healthy foods and the mortality rate and whatnot, and just sort of get that conversation going. But it's just done so well each season of this show. And I have people in my family that call me up and say that, that was done really well. So it's just a testament to the great writing and the eclectic group of writers they have in the room. They do a very good job of it.
Freema, did the episode this year reflect your own experiences?
Which particular episode?
The one where Max decides he's going to solve racism in the hospital.
Oh yeah, all of that was great. Particularly the episode where he decides to paint Black Lives Matter himself there on the floor. And ironically enough, my character comes around and slips on it. And of course, in that scene, I got to bring up to him the fact that Black doctors make 35% less than white doctors. Even on the other side, we're affected. But each time we have an episode like this, I might hit up David or hit up one of the writers and say, "Is that for real?" And so yes, so it's an educational experience at the same time, and they just do such a terrific job of it.
There was a scene where Helen kind of put Max in his place. Freema, how much input were you able to have into that storyline? Were you able to incorporate some of your experiences?
Yes, we're always encouraged on this show to collaborate, and I feel like that's not always part of the deal. in jobs, you don't always feel like your voice is valid, and that's so not the case here. And I remember when when we got the word that season 3 was about to start up, and we all had to, come together again at the height of what still was a very uncertain time. And I was back home in England, and I was really nervous about leaving my family, about flying, about being back in a city that was familiar but altogether completely changed. And so I got back here just a bit unsure about what we were doing here. And then we had a big Zoom meeting with all the team, and Peter and David, and not to speak for them, but I was surprised, first of all, that sentiment was echoed insofar as they were saying, yes, we could all be at home. We could all be safe right now. We could all be just, tucked away. And then what they said afterwards was incredibly impactful. We have a platform, and 2020 was a hell of a year. And we have a platform in which to further discussions. And whether it's the pandemic, whether it's Black Lives Matter, there was so many issues that were being tackled. It was so inspiring to me that we were actually just going to go there. We were going to do it. We were going to say the things that people are like, can we talk about this? And yes, viewers were lost, saying that, if we wanted to see how depressing the real life was, we'd watch the news. But the antithesis of that attitude is, if we look at more and more people are standing up for what they believe in, marching for what they believe in, campaigning for what they believe in. And I think it's actually the entertainment industry's responsibility to amplify and to reflect those voices. And so few of them are. And that is something that New Amsterdam does and beyond.
Now, one of the wonderful things that the show is able to do, being set at America's oldest public hospital, is really explore public health care. When there are so many issues that seem to need addressing or fixing in these days, how do you decide what you're going to tackle in the storylines?
Honestly, I don't decide anything. I have a wall of ideas that I want to do for the writers to look at.
Is that it behind you?
No, this is episode 1. But all the writers totally ignore my wall of ideas. They all have their own things that they're passionate about, their own ideas that have affected their families, their friends, an article they read in the news. So each writer comes in with their own passion, and then I help develop those ideas, and the other writers help develop those ideas. But, the episode we did on the environment, on global warming, was Peter's idea. This is something that he felt like, we have to talk about this. And so the ideas come from the people who are most passionate about them. But luckily or unluckily, they're all health issues. Global warming is a health issue. Racism is a health issue. we're not talking about these things because we want to, but because these are the ideas of the show. It's very easy to talk about sickness care, but we want to talk about healthcare. And in order to talk about healthcare, you have to talk about what's going on outside the hospital. What are the things that are bringing people into the hospital? And how can we prevent them from coming to the hospital in the first place? Those to me are the most exciting stories to tell.
Christopher and Maria, as fans of the show and health experts, is there a particular episode or storyline that really struck you that you were very impressed by?
Well, there were so many. I think, well, first of all, just in general, when I began to notice that other staff members were talking about the show around the water cooler, virtual or otherwise, one of the things that people were saying were things like, this hospital show, it's not just about solving the disease of the week mystery. They're actually dealing with public health. And if you look at all of the different storylines that have even been mentioned in this conversation, they're all in our global program of work at WHO. It was just remarkable for us to watch it because it's the only show that was really dealing with these types of issues of the affordability of healthcare, of how systemic racism affects health, how inequities affect health. And when I was first introduced to Peter, actually, and I asked him, was this intentional? His response was, well, we wanted to just have a frame through which we would discover, these other stories that we wanted to tell. And I said, well, what you've done is you've stumbled on the social determinants of health. This is what your show is about. And the other thing that your show is about that I think Peter and David just mentioned is, if I could put a word to it, it's compassion. It's this notion of struggling together. The word compassion comes from the Latin compassio, which means struggle together. And it's about people who may be different, who may have conflicting ideas, having a common goal and struggling to achieve that common goal. And when you watch the show, it's not just the characters doing it, but you can tell it's the actors doing it, that it's a true ensemble. And that was very inspiring to us, and was one of the reasons why we felt compelled to express our gratitude in this way.
Yeah, for me, all of that, but I like how when you do the stories and you talk about an issue that a patient has, it is patient driven, and you can see that everyone in the show is not only that disease that they have, they're a person, they have a life, they have a family. I love that you weave mental health into every episode. And I don't think I've seen a show that does that, because not only with this pandemic where all of us are going through this, but it affects it and you tackle it head on. And I love how that's part of every single storyline, whatever disease you're dealing with, whatever issue that you're dealing with. And I think that's really important because it brings it to the forefront, and it doesn't become such a taboo subject. People need to talk about this. And I think that's really, really critical. That's part of the way in which we deal with this. But I do love the characters. I watch television to escape. I don't watch television. And I love medical dramas, but I don't watch television to look and see, was that procedure correct or did they? I watch it to escape because I want a little bit of a separation. And I really struggled in the last 21 months to have that escape. And you guys have brought that. You've given that to me to escape from that, but yet you're real in the storyline. So I come away with it thinking like, you've pushed the needle a bit because you're making people think, and you're doing that through entertainment, but it's very serious. So it's an incredible, delicate balance. And there was one episode, Ryan, your character, when you go pick up your daughter and your daughter doesn't run into your arms. I had the same thing with my 2-year-old. It took a couple months for him to kind of come back to me. And I'm not a health worker. I don't work on the front lines. I've just been gone for a long time. But that to me is what so many health workers deal with, because they've separated not only to protect their families, but for extended periods of time. And I think that element of it too is also you just find a way to connect with people. So there's just lots of different aspects, but the mental health thing I think is really, really critical. And I love that you've brought it out and head on deal with it in every storyline.
You know, another thing that Ryan did in his character's arc, which affected me personally, was when he was managing, when his character was managing cancer treatment and was faced with the decision of whether to work full time or not, you know, having just recently been named director of the hospital. I faced a similar problem when I was on chemo for cancer, and then later when I began to lose my sight, an even more existential question of how can I continue to work, and should I take time off? Should I go off into a corner? And it's a deeply personal decision, because you need that right to be able to take that time off if you want to, if you have to. But at the same time, watching that character struggle with needing to work anyway as part of his healing, and the sacrifice that was making on the toll that it was making on your face, on your life, it just struck me as very resonant and very truthful.
That's wonderful to hear. I mean, and to David and the credit of the writers, that, you know, that's the gift of this show. You know, any show or film for me at its height can give you the experience of someone else. And either you can gain insight into what it's like to be someone totally different from you, which I think is a really valid experience to have, or you can relate and say, I feel the same way, I've experienced the same thing. And I think that's a really valuable experience to have, and speaks to our shared humanity and connection. So those are wonderful things to hear, and a credit to our writers who are writing these characters and these stories.
I just want to say something from you've both been so flattering and appreciative of us. I just want to say something back from us to you, which is, you know, the fact that we're on this panel with the World Health Organization and the two of you, that's the height of what we do. I mean, you know, we're like, you guys are gardeners, and we like write books about gardeners. You know, we pretend, we do tell stories, and we always hope that we're telling good enough stories that somehow they reach out into real life and have some sort of impact. The fact that you guys reached out to us, who are out there, you know, dealing with Ebola, dealing with COVID, dealing with the world of health, that you would notice us, let alone decide you wanted to engage with us, is so flattering for us, and is the height of compliment. You know, we get numbers back, and we get some reviews, or we get some, you know, random people on the street who may come up and appreciate us, but this is the height of compliment. So thank you for taking the interest and time to be here and notice us. And if there's any way in which we're helping you with your work, in any way going forward that we can have an exchange with you, which I know we are going to do, boy, is that the height of compliment for us.
So I was curious to hear from the cast, what kind of fan reactions have you gotten about how the show has impacted viewers' own health and how they view their healthcare experiences?
I have this crazy story. One time the WHO reached out to us and wanted to talk to us, and it was kind of the coolest thing that
That's
ever
kind of
happened
hard to believe, right?
on our show. So that happened once. Yeah.
It was a dream.
Although, you know, you're joking, but you do have that little storyline of, I think it was Tyler's character who was asking Max to lobby WHO to make racism part of the International Classification of Diseases, which was something that tickled us at WHO. And part of the running gag on the show was that WHO never responded. So just for fun, I went to the head of our ICD unit and called him up, and just out of curiosity, how would we respond And he was so funny. He said, who did you say wrote this letter? Dr. Max Goodwin. He plays a fictional character on a television show. He says, hold on a second, let me check. He says, no, I don't have any letter from Dr. Max Goodwin from New Amsterdam. I said, well, it's a fictional show. And he said, well, why would I respond to a fictional show? And I said, no, you wouldn't. He didn't. It's a thought exercise. It's a thought experiment. And he says, oh, well, why didn't you just say so?
So is racism now on the list of diseases at the WHO, thanks to New Hampshire?
We're working on it.
We're working on it. We take these letters very seriously and we respond to all of them.
That's right.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
But in all seriousness, there are a lot of health issues that the characters go through. We saw Dr. Blue go through recovery from drug addiction. We saw Max recover from cancer. Have viewers who are dealing with those same issues approached you?
Yes. Yeah, I found, now with social media, people can connect with you much easier. And I felt like that storyline, which was really powerful. And I felt like a credit to David Foster, who is a doctor, and he wrote the episode. It sort of just flowed through both me and Tyler, who plays Dr. Freema. Sorry, I always say that, Dr. Freema.
Very French, Lieutenant.
But people were reaching out a lot, and I felt a little nervous because I was like, oh no, I need to now have somewhere to point these people in the right direction, because obviously this is not my domain. I'm just depicting this character on television, but knowing that the work is really resonating with people, and that so many people who have been in addiction have been in that point where they've said, I need help. That's the moment that I think that people really resonated with my character. And then with the injury in the second year, people want to connect to the stories they're seeing, and when they can relate it to their own lives, I think they feel less alone in the world.
Tyler has been very candid on social media about how his journey has mirrored Iggy's. Have any of the episodes hit close to home for any of the cast, or maybe changed the way you advocate for yourself and your health?
Yes, I'm currently in a love triangle that I'm dealing with. It's really it's really a lot to do, but I'm learning from the show now. That's my one joke.
You're supposed to keep that a secret, buddy.
Has anybody found themselves kind of questioning, like, when they go to the doctor now, whether this is the right thing for them?
I will say,
Ryan had an appendicitis a couple years ago, and Eric Mannheimer, who wrote the book on which the show is based on, was right by Ryan's side. The cast came to Ryan's side. You had the cast of New Amsterdam around Ryan, like, advocating for his health.
Yes.
He actually faked it. He just wanted the attention.
I just wanted a few days off. I was in Tahiti. It was great. No, it was amazing. Janet and Joe, I think, were I went to the ER, and Janet showed up like minutes later and was by my side. Just like her character. What's that?
I rushed there, and I remember bringing you snacks that then you weren't really. I was like,
and then
I'm not really supposed to give you these.
I started eating one. Because I hadn't eaten for hours. Started eating one, and they were like, "Are you eating?
Tracy, what are you doing?" We're like,
"Go into your stomach. What are you?" Yeah, and I was like, "It's her fault. She brought him." And Freema rode with me in an ambulance from the ER to the hospital, and then a bunch of everybody came, and Eric Mannheimer came, and I talked to him about what was the best thing to do, and I ended up not removing it and just getting antibiotics, and knock on wood have been okay so far. But it was a very strange, the show mirroring life, mirroring the show moment of, like, I'm sitting there with Janet's there, Freema's there, and all the people are in scrubs, and there's a IV drip and all these things. And I'm like, am I at work? Is this real life? Am I having a mental breakdown?
I start cutting him open with a kitchen knife. I'm like, we've got to get it out of you. There's no more time.
David has not written this scene. This is bad. But I was incredibly supportive. And it was, and it affected my actual health. I made decisions based on talking to Eric and that relationship because of this show. So, yeah.
Are we going to do Chris's performance on this, or did we decide not to?
I can do that in 90 seconds or so.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, just to set it up a little bit, one of my favorite quotes is from Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, who said, "Loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the inability to express what matters to you most." And I think particularly during this period of pandemic, people can really relate to that. And the role of the arts is not always just to cure a disease, it's to heal. And or the role of health is not always just to cure a disease, it's to heal. And the arts have a role to play in that by giving people the words to express something that they might not have been able to, or maybe there are no words to express it. So it becomes a sound, a piece of music, the way the light hits something, or the way you move through space. When I was losing my vision, and I have terminal glaucoma, I have less than 5% of normal vision. I went through what I would call a kind of a death, because in our modern society, 80% of the way that we engage with the world is visual. And when you lose that, it's like a death. And I went through all of the different phases that one would. I went through a period of grieving, of not being able to enjoy the way I experienced beauty before. I became incredibly anxious and worried, dreading the future, because I didn't know how I was going to make my living. I went into denial and said that this just simply isn't happening to me. I would bargain. I would, if I eat something different, if I do something different, my optic nerve will regenerate and I can see again. And then eventually, like in death, you do come to a form of acceptance. And in my case, it was allowing myself to get the adaptive technology like the cane and the tinted glasses to say to myself, I am this person now, I need to manage it. But there's another step, and that's what I call the transcendent stage, where it's more than just simply acceptance. It's being able to see the meaning in what is happening. It's being able to transform into this new identity. And when I began to learn echolocation, literally the neural pathways in my brain began to change, began to reroute from my visual cortex to my other senses. So when I hear a sound, it's not just sound, it's sound passing through the matter around me and giving me an oral picture of the environment around me. And it wasn't better than my previous world, but in some ways it was more palpable, more immediate. And I began to realize that rather than feeling exiled into this darkness and isolated, I could begin to find the beauty in it, and to find that moment of contemplation rather than fear. So just as you willingly close your eyes to better savor a glass of red wine, just as you willingly close your eyes to better embody a beautiful piece of music, just as you willingly close your eyes to trace the gentle slope of a lover's forearm, so too do I accept the closing of my eyes to better share this moment with you.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Christopher.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's
beautiful.
Well, at the end of the day, what is art and creativity? It is about, in the face of adversity, finding a meaning that's true for you. And at the end of the day, hope is a creative act. And that, to me, is what your show is all about.
To wrap up with a question from Citi, our festival sponsor. What can the audience look forward to in terms of potential relationship growth, romances, or shifting dynamics in season 4? Which sounds like a Peter and David question, but maybe someone in the cast is brave enough.
Oh, I'll answer it. No.
I'll just say
That's a
Or Maria.
No.
the name of the first episode is More Joy. And that's what we're trying to find in season 4. Like the hope that Christopher was talking about. That's what each character is desperately longing for, to find the joy in their lives again. So I don't know if anyone else wants to take it away, but that's really the road we're on.
I think you're connecting that to what Christopher just said and took us through was exactly right. Our world is in a moment of facing real darkness, and the triumph of the human soul or the spirit, whatever you want to call it, to be able to push past the darkness and still find the light, even if it's in different form, is to a large degree what our season is about this year, is finding the joy in spite of this continuing, harrowing, terrifying time we're in.
Did anyone in the cast want to add to how that theme is reflected in their character's arc in season 4? Or are we all fearful of getting fired?
No, I mean, again, just to echo what Chris said so beautifully, that's transformation on such a profound level. And to discover new things about yourself and to appreciate your senses in a new way and to learn, the way that you experience life. That's the epitome of growth, of character arc, of change. And that's what David is writing for all of these characters this year is the challenges that we face, how we overcome them, what we learn from our failures, from our successes, from falling in love, from getting our heart broken, from all these things. How does it make us grow and change? And what do we learn? And where are we now? So yeah, I think that's what's on the horizon for these characters in season 4.
I have one thing to add. One of you has worked with us before.
Who's that?
Freema, do you recognize Maria? She's Doctor Who.
Oh, no.
In what guise did you come?
She has regenerated.
Right, okay.
She's an actual Doctor Who.
Gosh, I'm like,
Do tell.
No.
No?
Not at all. Can I just say one quick thing? And one of the things that we try to talk about at WHO through this pandemic, and we're still very much in it. I know that many countries have sort of reached that peak and got over the end, but many countries are really, really struggling. And the current situation that we're in with the virus evolving and this Delta variant, and it won't be the last one, the fatigue that the entire world has, the lack of access to tools that keep people safe, that prevent people from dying. They're not reaching the people around the world. So we have quite a long way to go. And I think, everyone needs to understand that they have a role to play, whatever that may be, whether you're acting as a medical professional or you are one. And I think as much as you can, keep telling those stories, but keep that hope alive, because I do think there are quite some dark days ahead. I do think we're going to have some setbacks, but we're all in this together. And what you can do to help all of us through that, keep doing it. Keep telling those stories, keep being authentic, and give people that courage to stand up and fight for the things they need to fight for themselves, for their families. And keep making people happy, make people smile, make people think, make people laugh, make people cry. I'm a fan, so I'll keep watching. So keep making great television. And thanks for what you do.
Amen to that.
Thank you.
On
Thank
that
you.
wonderful note, thank you for joining us for this special PaleyFest New York conversation with the members of the wonderful cast and creative team behind New Amsterdam. And thanks to Paley's official card and official sponsor, Citi. You can enjoy more of these programs by clicking the subscribe button below. Thanks and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.